Harry Horton, Washington.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks very much, Rebecca Foster. Hope you had a good weekend, I hope you're well. It's Monday, July 16th, 2018. And it's raining. Haven't said that for a couple of months. Bit of rain around, no harm in that. The gardeners are delighted. Welcome to Monday's programme.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, Ray McGovern is a CIA legend, briefed multiple presidents over 5-6 decades. He's a peace activist and a terrific journalist. Check out raymcgovern.com. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Trump. That is Donald Trump, to be proper and polite. The president of the US, his meeting with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, which took place in Helsinki earlier on. Rather extraordinary, really. We'll talk about that with Raymond, but we'll delve down into the truth, the lies and the spin about collusion. Ray's the man. He joins me this hour. And I have an hour packed full of very interesting stories for you in the second hour of the programme. Totally moving away from politics, mostly moving away from politics. This is Monday's Richie Allen Show, live on Fab Radio 2. Tune in, radio, triggerwarning.tv, richieallen.co.uk as well. You can join me or join in. You have joined me. You can join in by tweeting at Richie Allen Show. You know that because I tell you that all the time. Good evening to you. Hope you've had a good weekend, and I hope you're happy that it's cooled down a bit today and it's been raining a bit today as well. Hey, no harm in that. That's all nice. That's all very good. Vive la France! Vive la France! I have a listenership in France. I don't know whether my French listeners were too bothered by the World Cup final yesterday, but if you were, well done. Good luck. My other half, the oft-mentioned Caroline, couldn't care less, read a book through the final as I watched it. If you're a Croatian listener to the programme, commiserations. You had a good run in the tournament. And ultimately, a lot more important things in life than soccer, football or foosball. Only one story this hour then, and that is the meeting between President Donald Trump with President Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, which is the capital of Finland. I had to look it up myself in my Rand McNally Atlas. Remember them, dear listener? Rand McNally Atlases. Is atlases the plural of atlas? I think it is. Not Atli, no. I knew where Helsinki is, of course. Eamon Coughlin won the World 5,000 metre Championships there back in 1983. He beat a German guy into the silver medal. That's all I remember. That's why I know where Helsinki is. So Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin. They met, they spoke, and they held a joint press conference afterwards, which even to this tired and jaded old hack was very interesting. Here's how Sky News reported on all of this.
Good evening. The first summit between President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin has taken place in Helsinki. Despite all the pressures surrounding the post-Cold War relationship, the two of them presented a mostly united front, with assertions that the summit was useful and a first step. But in what amounts to a new moment in East-West relations, they both took the opportunity to deny there was any collusion during the 2015 US election campaign.
I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily. And frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race. And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
You can't believe anyone. Why do you think that President Trump trusts me? I trust him completely. He is defending the US interests. I defend the Russian interests. Give me at least one fact which would tell about a certain collusion during the election campaign in the United States. It's completely absurd.
Give me one more fact, said Putin. Okay, so that was the crux of it. There was a bit more. I'll play you a little bit more in a second. But on that, what did Sky reporter Dominic Waghorn make of it all? He was there, and he sums up here what he saw and what he felt about it, Dominic Waghorn.
Well, it was jaw-dropping. It was absolutely gobsmacking. We're used to press conferences that we find extraordinary that Donald Trump gives us, but nothing like this. And this was the US president, and it will cause a storm of outrage back home. It already is. This was the US president given the opportunity by one questioner to confront Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader, who's accused now of orchestrating an attack on American democracy by the FBI and the intelligence community, have now presented compelling evidence, and this was his answer when given that opportunity. President Putin says it was not Russia. Let me just say, I don't see any reason why it should be. Now, John Brennan, the former CIA director under Barack Obama, has tweeted saying this stands up now to, it rises to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. He says that President Trump is guilty of treason in what he said, because he's taken sides with Vladimir Putin, the Russian leader, and dumped on America's intelligence community. So we've just seen the American motorcade drive past us on the street down there. I wonder now what Donald Trump will be seeing of the outraged reaction back home. Vladimir Putin's motorcade we haven't seen yet, but as he flies home back to Moscow tonight, I think he can only be pinching himself that things have gone so well. To get that reaction from Donald Trump, I think will be exactly what he wanted out of this press conference, out of this summit. And of course, it will be hugely divisive back in America as Americans take sides, as they do in a deeply polarized society, as to actually what went wrong and what happened here today in Helsinki.
Yes, Waghorn, Sky reporter there, unsurprisingly towing the party line. All the UK news media today is saying that Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's puppet. You heard Waghorn say there, pretty much irrefutable FBI evidence. Well, that's a bit of a lie, that. There ain't any irrefutable evidence. The great Ray McGovern's going to get into that with me in about 15 minutes' time. Trump is Putin's puppet, eh? Maybe they are both puppets of a far more sinister and hidden power, maybe. Just maybe. And maybe the European Union is making hay while the sun shines today, right? Why? You ask why? Is the European Union happy about all of this? Well, European Union leaders and the press across the continent is saying that Europe needs to come closer together to fight Russian interfering and Russian aggression. They're saying that they can't, Europe that is, can't trust Trump's America to keep Russia in line. So the European Union loves this, loves it. Now, to something a bit more interesting, but which is getting no coverage, and that is a Trump answer to a question from the assembled press corps. Trump was asked what specifically had been said in the meeting vis-a-vis Syria. Right, reporter stood up, asked him a three-part question. The first part of the question was, when you talked about Syria, did you decide on anything? What was the general gist of the discussion on Syria? Listen to what Donald Trump said, and particularly those who wallow in this swamp of Trump's, not creation, but where he dwells. Those of you who are not for turning, all of these QAnon believers, those of you who think that Trump is some saviour to deliver us all from the deep state, listen to the answer he gives when asked, what did you and Vlad discuss when it came to Syria? What did you say, Donald?
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part of the question. We've worked with Israel long and hard for many years, many decades. I think we've never has any country been closer than we are. President Putin also is helping Israel, and we both spoke with Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us.
I can just play that last bit again for you, Trump supporters.
Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel. And
that's what we're going to do. The question again from the field of assembled reporters was, Donald, when you and Vladimir spoke about Syria, what did you talk about? What would you do?
President Putin also is helping Israel.
We're going to do what Israel wants.
With Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria.
What are the certain things that Israel would like to do regarding Syria? I wonder, would any of the reporters, even if they were given a chance, would they have had the balls to ask him? Exactly what? Oh, crazy-haired one. What would Israel like to do about Syria? We all know, of course, what Israel would like to do. And Trump said, while Putin nodded along, that Putin is going to help Israel. We're both going to help Israel. We'll do what Israel wants.
Having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us. So both countries would work jointly. And I think that when you look at all of the progress that's been made in certain sections with the eradication of ISIS, we're about 98%, 99% there, and other things that have taken place that we've done, and that, frankly, Russia has helped us with in certain respects. But I think that working with Israel is a great thing, and creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much.
We're going to do whatever the Zionist whoremongers tell us to do, both me and Vlad. So you can take your cue and on, Trump supporters. All of you on the alt-right and all of the rest of you on the far left to support the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, and stick all of that nonsense where the sun doesn't shine. They're under the Zionist jackboot. What they are told to do, they will do. And Putin just nodded along, even when Trump was vomiting all that bullshit about how the United States and Israel had eradicated ISIS. The Assad army, aided by air support from Russia, has driven the lunatic jihadists to the brink of extinction. And yet Trump, who lies so pathologically that every time a new blue fairy is born, she only lasts about 20 seconds before keeling over. Trump lies, and Putin stands there and nods along. What are you going to do about Syria? Whatever the hell Israel tells us to do is the answer there. Take that back to your newspapers. Lovely. Nobody reporting on that today, though, except yours truly. Right? Wow. Wow. Theresa May updated Parliament on her NATO meeting. While in the middle of it, she took time to comment on the Trump-Putin meeting. And she launched into a diatribe, did May, of accusations against Russia. Why not? Why miss an opportunity?
The appalling use of a nerve agent in Salisbury is another example of Russia's growing disregard for the global norms and laws that keep us all safe. And it is a further example of a well-established pattern of behaviour to undermine Western democracies and damage our interests around the world.
Undermining democracies? Honest to Christ, like. A UK Prime Minister accusing another country of undermining democracies. Are you shitting me, Theresa?
In recent years, we have seen Russia stepping up its arms sales to Iran.
What? And what about selling arms to Saudi Arabia to murder Yemenis with on a daily basis? What about giving money and arms to the apartheid state of Israel to further brutalise hundreds of thousands of innocent Palestinians in the biggest prison in the world. What about that, Theresa?
Shielding the Syrian regime's barbaric use of chemical weapons.
No proof of it. None. Except all the proof is to the contrary, that they haven't used any chemical weapons against anybody. Just another lie. Why not? Keep going.
Launching cyber attacks that have caused economic damage.
Nonsense. Where have they done that? Where's the evidence?
And spreading malicious and fake news stories on an industrial scale.
Fake news coming from a British politician. Are you shitting me? Hey, have you read The Guardian lately? No? The Sun. Have you read The Sun, love? Fake news. Really? What else did she say?
Mr. Speaker, our long-term objective remains a constructive relationship with Russia. So it is right that we keep engaging both as individual nations and as a NATO alliance. So I welcome the meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Helsinki today.
Oh, I'm going to throw up. There's only so many lies you can hear in a day, you know what I mean? Baloney! Baloney. Now, as you know, US lawmakers have indicted 12 alleged Russian spies, not in the US, of course, they're in Russia. And they've indicted them on charges of interfering in the election. 'Tis a nonsense, I believe. Nigel Farage is a Trump ally, former UKIP leader, and these days, LBC presenter. The world is mad. But anyway, Farage was on Fox News, and this is what he had to say about the Russian spies, the 12 indictees, those 12 men and women, presumably, indicted by the US Justice Department. Here's Farage.
Well, let's just be clear. 12 Russian spies have been found spying. It's what they do. They do it to us, we do it to them. It may not be very seemly, but it's how the world works. So there's nothing in that other than a very strange coincidence of timing, it seems to me. Look, the ultimate sanity test is ask somebody, do you want better relations between Russia and the West, or do you want them to continue to deteriorate? And anybody with half a brain will say, well, do you know what? Talking is better than not talking.
Nigel, I know you were with the president a few days ago. Talking to him, what is different, in your opinion, about this meeting? Because Putin has met with our presidents in the past. They've all pressed that reset button, saying that things are going to get better. Our relationship is going to change. What do you think is different about these two meeting today?
Well, I think the fact is that the previous meetings have happened sort of around the back of global summits. This is the first time, they've sat down specifically to try and work out where this relationship is going. So I think it is important. There are questions, clearly, that the president has to ask of Putin. He may not answer them, but I think it's important, that President Trump says, look, if you ever have or you ever intend to meddle in our elections, please get the hell out. But maybe we can start to have a more sensible relationship.
So that was obviously recorded before the meeting, but the interesting part of that was spies. What the spies do? They spy, don't they? All right. It's a big game. We'll put that to Ray in the conversation when he joins me in a few minutes' time. 21 minutes past the hour. A lot of tweets on this. Tweet the programme. It's at Richie Allen Show. If you put Richie Allen Show, all one word, in Twitter, you'll get, and press enter, you'll get to see what other people are tweeting to me, and you can engage them and chat away with them while listening to the programme. Back in 2 with Ray McGovern.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today.
Welcome back. It's Monday's program. I hope you're in good form. Nobody likes Mondays. That's because you've gotten used to, if you work a 5-day Monday to Friday week, that is, you've gotten used to normality. Because it isn't normal working for people, for corporations we don't like. You know, working our fingers to the grindstone. Coming home exhausted all the time. It isn't normal. It isn't right. And you get a taste of normality when you're with your family and friends at the weekend, and then you got to go back to the madness on Monday. That's why we don't like Mondays. It's as simple as that. Hi to Ricky Emmett and to Cartoon Drunk and to Base Ninja there. A lot of commentary on Theresa May and her statement at Westminster, or in Westminster today, when she updated Parliament on her NATO excursion last week. These Are the Damned is the blue ribbon winner of the tweets on this. He tweets, Theresa May was talking that much shit, then she would need a truckload of Tic Tacs just to clean up her breath after all that shite she spoke. That's about right. Can't add anything to that, so I'm not going to try. Hi to Moinga as well, to Bob Stew. It's like a soap opera, says Bob Stew, where real people get hurt. That's absolutely right. While it is theatre, while it is Punch and Judy, while it is a nonsense to convince us of its legitimacy, while all of that is true, real people die. Real people are murdered and tortured. Real people's villages and houses and cities are burned to the ground. That's a very good point as well. Never forget it. Things are funny, and I sometimes take the low road, don't I? I certainly take the low road sometimes in the monologue in terms of the commentary, but people die. That's a fact. Let's welcome back to the programme somebody I'm more than fond of. He's a remarkable man. I told you earlier on, not that you needed to be told, that for decades, as a very, very high-ranking CIA officer, he briefed several US presidents. He's a writer, a journalist and an activist these days, and I recommend his articles, which I read all the time. You can read them at his website, raymcgovern.com. It's a real pleasure to welcome back to the programme our friend Ray McGovern. I know you're busy and you're in demand today because of all that's going on, Ray, so sincere thanks for giving us some of your time. Thank you. And welcome.
You're most welcome.
Great to have you back. You obviously, because you told me, saw the press conference following the Trump-Putin meeting. Obviously, the online news wires and the 24-hour cable news channels have gone crazy. It's a circus. What did you make of what was said by both men regarding, obviously, collusion and hacking, which you've written extensively about, and I've tweeted your articles out. Great stuff, you and Bill Binney. What did you make of what you saw in that press conference?
Well, you know, Richie, if you watched it, or those of your listeners watched it, you saw a man being thrown out before the press conference ever began.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. His name is Sam Husseini. He was covering the press conference, or the media conference, for The Nation magazine. What was his offense? He had a little piece of paper, 8 by 5, or what are they, normal size, which said, treaty to ban nuclear weapons. Whoa, is there such a treaty? Oh, yes, there is. Is it in force? Well, yes, it is. How many countries have signed it? 59. Was it a major achievement? Well, it's the first legally binding international agreement to comprehensively prohibit nuclear weapons with the goal of leading toward total elimination. How old is it? Just a week over 1 year old. Was it mentioned at the press conference?
No.
No. Okay. Now, I'm happy to talk about the press conference itself, but I think sometimes we have to take about 5 steps back. What's the real danger to us here? I have 9 grandchildren. What's the danger to them? Well, I have just finished reading Daniel Ellsberg's major life's work. It's called The Doomsday Machine. It will stand your hair on end. I was aware of some of the close misses there. We almost destroyed each other on the planet, but I was hardly aware of all of them. And of course, the doomsday clock that was invented way back in the 50s is now at 2 minutes to doomsday. Now, of course, we're sloughing off on our nuclear weapons, right? Yeah, right. $1 trillion, $1 trillion being sunk into modernizing, updating, making them more accurate over the last 10 years. That's what the U.S. intends. And Russia, well, they're more clever. They keep some money out of their budget for social concerns. And they'll keep pace. They're very talented people, and they'll build lots of weapons to compete. So my sense is that when a man who is not shouting, it's sort of like what happened to me at the U.S. Senate just about 2 months ago, when he's there with a piece of paper that somebody says, "Oh, what's he got on a piece of paper? Ban nuclear weapons or treaty to ban nuclear weapons." Well, wow, they got to throw him out?
A legitimate question, Ray. Presumably, Sam was there to ask that question. The one you've posed there? What's happening with this treaty, and why aren't you're right to mention that Trump announced only last week that unthinkable, unfathomable amounts of money were being spent to upgrade and to basically maintain the fleet of nukes that the US has. So presumably Sam was there to say, what's this all about?
Yeah, well, the way those things are orchestrated, as you know, Richie, is that he never would have been called upon. And what he said was that he just wanted to hold it up, I mean, if there's any human embarrassment to 2 world leaders talking about everything other than the main problem facing the world, well, there's something wrong there. And I really admire a guy like Sam, who peaceably, without disrupting, was just wanted to hold up the sign. Now, what's the implications here? We talk about freedom of the press. The Western world is bragging about how strong and how true to the freedom of the press the Finns are. There were 600 placards on the way from the airport into wherever this thing was held, and Trump had to see them all. And he said, freedom of the press. Well, wait a second, folks. Here are the Finns. They're doing the security here, right? Did they agree? Did they agree to a procedure where somebody was not allowed to hold up a sign? My God. So it's pretty bad. And when the Finns, who are bragging about how liberal they are on freedom of the press, don't even allow a fellow like a peaceable fellow, and I can vouch for that, like Sam Husseini, to hold up a sign, well, we come to a pretty bad pass. And, I can talk about the press conference itself now, but, it's really necessary to stress that when we talk about what should have been discussed there or what things should have been launched, now it is possible that the START 2 treaty will be lengthened. I think it expires in 2021. But not much attention was given to the strategic situation. And that, of course, is to the extent that things are just as labil, as the Germans say, just as delicate and as tentative as they have been since we invented these things. Well, I just hope that my grandchildren are as lucky as I have been in living through the last several decades where we almost blew up the planet, and that should have been at least called to people's attention. So my hat's off to Sam Husseini for doing that. My hat's not off for the Finns, who abided by these very restrictive, even in the U.S. Senate, you can hold up. Well, unless they tell you not to expressly, like my Code Pink people were told before the Senate hearing on the torturer who is now head of the CIA, they told they couldn't. First they said, yeah, you can hold your plackets. And as soon as they did, they got arrested and thrown out. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. And when you're not able to talk about doomsday minus 2 hours, then that's a very cogent, a very graphic illustration of how bad it is with respect to how you restrict the questions. But even so, the press conference was interesting. And sorry for this long preface, but I think we do need to take into account what really matters, and what really matters cannot be discussed, at least in current circumstances.
Listen, I'm a little bit embarrassed, and maybe there's something that maybe guys like me need to become aware of. A kind of a jadedness, Bray. I saw that incident, obviously, and maybe because I've seen so many of them in recent years, including, the disgraceful treatment of yourself, that I neglected to bring it up. And really, I need to be bringing that up at the beginning of conversations like this. But it's become such a normal thing that, you look at it and you think, Christ, that's terrible. And then you just go on and you look at, what else was said in the press conference and reading your articles and talking about collusion and all of that and the DNC. I should have been asking you that. Mea culpa. Of course it's hugely important. But that's just how regular this is becoming, that real journalists, people with serious credentials, with good questions to ask or points to make, are being manhandled and physically assaulted and abused in that way. So you don't apologise for bringing it up. Of course we have to talk about it. And I'm annoyed with myself for being so blasé about it, watching it and thinking, well, this happens all the bloody time, And then 15 minutes later, I'm thinking of something else. But maybe it's easy for me to be like that because I do what I do from the comforts of my office and my studio, and I don't go to these places to confront these people. So you're right.
Well,
you're right.
Well, you got a full-time job keeping you from doing that. But when people like Sam step up to the plate, as we say here in the States, those are the kinds of examples that we need more of.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just add one little vignette. When I confronted Donald Rumsfeld, who used to be our Secretary of Defense, and caught him in two major lies about weapons of mass destruction and so-called ties between Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, that was on live TV, okay? And it was on live TV and CNN and C-SPAN. And so when the goons came down to get me, Rumsfeld looked at the cameras and he said, no, let them stay for a second, okay? Now, what was the difference there? The difference there was that those cameras would have captured what happened to me. I was one of these guys in a black hat, of all things, put his elbow in my solar plexus and was pushing me away from the microphone, but I had the presence of mind to hold on to the microphone, so whatever happened to me was going to be broadcast as well. Now, what I want to say is that as I left that place, here's Anderson Cooper. Gets on the phone, calls me my cell. Mr. McGovern, you're causing quite a stir down here in Atlanta. We'd like to have you on my program, but first I have to ask you a question. I said, well, what's that, Anderson? He said, well, how do I say this? Weren't you afraid? Now I said to myself, Richie.
Wow, were you afraid?
My God. Here's Anderson Cooper, heir to the Vanderbilt fortune, pretty face on CNN, and he's asking me, wasn't I afraid? So I let him have it. I said, Anderson, I have to be really candid with you. I had done my homework. I knew if I asked him certain questions, he'd have to lie or at least admit that he was wrong before. You might want to try that sometime, Anderson. Do your homework. Ask some real questions. You'll find it's a real high. You really will. He said, well, I'll have my people get in touch with your people. I said, no, Anderson, I don't have any people.
It's just me.
Just call me back. And I went on the show that night, and he asked me the same question to lead off. These people have no shame. Why are they afraid? Oh, well, I've gone on too long, but this is one of the things that comes out at these press conferences. They are afraid of real questions. And if they want to keep, there was a lady taking pictures on her cell phone. Who was that? That was Mary Louise Kelly. Who is she? Well, she's the expert, in quotes, on National Public Radio. Okay. Now, you would have think that she would be remonstrating with these goons, right? Oh, no. She's just taking pictures of what happened to Sam. She's taking the picture. I mean, there's no solidarity at all. So
I saw that lady. I had no idea who she was. I saw that lady with the dark hair, the long hair, taking photographs. That's who you're referring to. Yeah,
no, I think she's got blonde hair.
Oh, she's blonde
I may
hair,
have
does
it
she?
wrong, but she.
I doubt you're wrong. I doubt you're wrong. It's probably me. But yeah, why take pictures there? And why not stand up? And why not encourage the other press members to stand up and say, well, I'll tell you what, guys, as long as Sam has been put out of the room, we're not going to stick around either. They either take questions from all of us and let us cover it, or none of us. I mean,
wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
You know, we can aspire to that. We're a long way from it now, but who knows? You know, maybe everything's possible.
John Brennan, former CIA chief, of course, under Obama. It's a weird world, Ray. I've been making television programs, radio programs, I should say, and to a lesser extent TV for 20 years. I've never known anything like this. You know, it's very theatrical, very soap opera-esque. He said that Trump's performance was high crimes and misdemeanors, treasonous even, and that Trump's comments were imbecilic and indicative of the fact that he is in the pocket of Putin. This is obviously to do with collusion. Now, you've been talking about these collusion allegations since they began, and writing about them and debunking them and analysing them in a way that really nobody else has been doing, to be absolutely fair to you. What's going on here, Ray? There is no evidence. There's none that I can see.
With respect to Brennan and his comment that Trump's performance today was, quote, nothing short of treasonous, end quote. Well, you know, what we have here is sort of mirror imaging. John Brennan is running scared. They're about to get to him. They're going through the small fry now in the FBI. And sooner or later, the small fry, or the medium fry, if we want to talk about Peter Strzok, are going to realize that they've been had. Okay, they're taking the rap for John Brennan, Jim Comey, the guy at NSA, whoever you happen to be at the time, and James Clapper. And when people say, well, come on, Ray, you think there really was an attempt to affect the election? I say, sure there was, but it wasn't the Russians.
Yeah.
It was Brennan. It was Strzok. I mean, it's very clear in these text messages. They wanted to prevent this guy from becoming president. And when he became president, they kept at it so that he would be impeached. It's very clear. So what's going to happen? They're going to get to John Brennan. I would predict maybe it'd be 2 months before they sort out what Brennan did. And I fully expect that once these, well, not really smart people at the FBI realize they've been had, okay, that they discharge these orders from upper people like James Comey and John Brennan, they're going to turn state's evidence, plea bargain, or at least cooperate, as we say in the States, and the truth will come out. Now, is that Pollyanna? Well, the deep state usually wins these things. So in one sense, it is Pollyanna, but it's the truth. And it explains why John Brennan, you know, he's not a real bright guy. He should be he should be somewhere in New Zealand hiding out, because they'd come after him. Instead, he's calling Trump treasonous, whereas it's on the record that Brennan, with this dossier, which was mentioned today, and other really, really stupid tricks, violated the law. And the only way you can explain this, a lot of these people, the highest law enforcement people in our government, how did they think they could get away with it? Simple. Hillary was a shoo-in. No one was going to indict these guys for doing what they did. They're going to get special awards and be able to stay in place like Brennan wanted to. So unless you understand that they were proceeding on the assumption, and Comey has said this explicitly, he said we were proceeding in an environment where Hillary Clinton was going to win. And so, blah, blah, blah. And so we played fast and loose with the law. We tried to sabotage Trump. And when he won, we kept trying to sabotage him, and they're still doing it to this day. Witness the fact that right before he goes off to Helsinki, or off to Europe at least, off to Helsinki, they list, they indict 12 ham sandwiches. I mean, you probably know. You know the expression, right? The grand jury could indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
It doesn't prove anything. And luckily, you know, we get Bill Binney. Now, Bill is a no-nonsense guy. He's a mathematician.
Right? Remind our listeners, Ray, Bill, of course, is, again, like yourself, very highly thought of, former NSA officer, isn't he, Bill? You introduced me to Bill, actually. Go ahead there.
Yeah, he's technical director.
Yeah.
And the brains behind many of the collection things that were instituted and still are in operation today. Well, he keeps doing his homework. And it takes him about 1/10 the time it does most technical people to figure out what's going on. He's got the goods on this fellow called Lucifer 2.0. Now, just to explain, his role is key to these indictments. His role was key to that flaccid analysis, the assessment done by FBI, CIA, and NSA back in January of 2017. Everything depends on Lucifer. Now, who is he? Who is she? What is it? Well, it's not the Russians, okay? And Bill can prove it. And he's working on something now. Stay tuned. Next couple of days, you will see some technical things that we will try to make intelligible to the rest of us. But it shows that Lucifer was manipulated. His stuff was manipulated. It's fraud out and out. And technical people can prove that. Now, what's the problem there, Richie? The problem there is that most lay people, they say, well, it's just too difficult. It's too hard. I can't understand it. Well, you can understand it, and you better pay attention because it shows in a way that is irrefutable that these guys were making it all up, and Lucifer, likely as not, was working for John Brennan rather than the Russians.
And the genesis of this, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, was the allegations, which it's far more than allegations, really. It happened that Clinton people, the nefarious activities around Bernie Sanders, that's where this begins, right? Really, if we talk about hacking and emails and servers and manipulation of a result, it goes right to the heart of the primary between Clinton and Bernie Sanders.
That's exactly right, Richie. And what we have here is, very briefly, June 12, 2016, Julian Assange announces that he has emails relating to Hillary Clinton and he's about to publish them. So June 12th, okay. June 14th, this CrowdStrike, this very dubious cyber security firm working for Hillary Clinton, announces they found telltale signs of Russian intrusion into the DNC. Okay? Next day, June 15th, appears Lucifer 2.0. He says, yep, CrowdStrike has a right, and we did it. Okay, that make you suspicious? That's where it all started. Now, as soon as the Democrats realized that Julian Assange had the goods on how Hillary cheated, let's not play around with words, how she cheated Bernie Sanders out of the nomination, they ran into a panic zone. And they said, what are we going to do? And you can just see them sitting around. Anybody got any ideas? My God, if he comes out with this stuff before the Democratic National Convention, my God, Bernie might, what do we do? Somebody says, blame it on the Russians. And somebody else says, well, wait a second. It was Julian Assange. Not the, well, hey, we get a twofer here. We hate Julian Assange. Just we'll say that the Russians hacked and they gave it to Julian Assange. And that way we can blame the Russians and deflect attention from the content of these emails. And it worked like a charm. That's where it started. Now, what happened? What's really important here? Today, what did Trump say? What happened to the server? Okay. Now, they're blaming the intrusion. They're blaming the scooping up of emails from the Democratic National Committee on the Russians. Well, what happened when that was discovered, like on the 15th of June 2016 and later? Well, you know what? Nobody did anything, and the head of the FBI refused to insist on looking at the servers, on looking at the computers. He said, oh my, what are we going to do? And he did nothing, okay?
Inspector Clouseau would have done that.
Right. Well, I wish it was so benign.
Yeah,
but the thing is, here's Trump today saying, where's the server? Where's the server? What happened to the server? Because anybody with any investigatory skills would have seized possession of the server. As a matter of fact, the totally corrupt head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, it's supposed to be the Oversight Committee, orchestrated a hearing where he very gently asked James Comey, the head of the FBI at the time, he said, well, did you look at the server? Did you look at the computers? And Comey said, we never got a chance to look at the computers. Now, I agree that best practices would indicate that we should have actually had physical access, but there's this lovely, lovely cyber firm, CrowdStrike, that they're very good, top notch, so we relied on them. Period. End of discussion. Preempting any questioning from anybody else about, now wait a second, Mr. Comey, are you telling me, is John McCain saying this is an act of war? The Russians are waging war on us, and you didn't seize the computers? Could you explain that again? And so what I'm saying here is that was the most interesting, in some respects, parts of this press conference today, because Trump saying, where are the servers? I want to know what happened to the servers. That's what I asked my intelligence director. And you know what? Hillary, not Hillary in this case, the servers were destroyed. But you know what? This is something, please mark this down if you would. He talks about, 36 or 33,000 emails that Hillary destroyed or did not give to the people that she should have given to. Well, you know what? NSA, the National Security Agencies, has them. If they went over the internet, they have them. How do we know that? We know that not only from Bill Binney, from Ed Snowden. They collect it all, and they store it. So anything that goes on over the internet, including Strzok and Page's personal texts and telephone conversations, NSA has them. So there's a real disconnect. Has no one told Trump? Has no one told Trump to ask NSA to give him Hillary's emails, that he doesn't have to ask Russia for them? He can just go to the NSA and say, look, I want you to dig out those 33,000 Hillary emails. I want you to dig out what Trump and Lisa Page were saying in their personal cell phones. So there's an air of unreality here because Trump really doesn't seem to be very well briefed.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Ray. Can we? I know that we said 25 minutes. Can you stick around for another 10 minutes? Is that okay?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Let me just do a quick recap, by the way, just in case somebody is just tuned in. Our friend and somebody we're very fond of, Ray McGovern, I say that because of Ray's unimpeachable service, not only when he worked for his government, but when he left, and he now works for the people and for everybody else that he represents through his activism, through his peace work, through his journalism that you can read on McGovern.com. We've obviously been talking about the press conference today and the terrible incident before that where a journalist well known to Ray was thrown out of that press conference before it began because he had a piece of paper with the nuclear treaty printed on it. Absolutely deplorable stuff. We got into that. If you missed any of it, of course, it's all podcasted and YouTubed a little bit later on. You said something great there, this unreality. And this is what I don't understand. And I want to play you a little bit of audio. I know you heard it today, but I want to play it again. I don't understand what's going on with this story. Because what Trump has, to me anyway, and this is just me, it's my opinion and nobody else's, he's proven to be a kind of a wet dream for the neocons and the Zionists and the Israeli lobby in America. That's how I see it. And I sometimes talk to Paul Craig Roberts, and occasionally I talk to Philip Giraldi. That's because you introduced me to Phil. It's thanks to you that he was on this programme, and we talk about these things. And I think he's a wet dream for these, for this deep state. So what's going on, Ray? Why wouldn't he just demand those emails? And I want to play a little bit of audio that you heard today, and this is true. It's not edited. It's only about 55 seconds long. It's when the president and President Putin were asked, had they talked about Syria during their private meeting? And if so, what had they spoken about? And Trump's answer doesn't surprise me. Not that I'm a know-all, I'm certainly not, but it doesn't surprise me because of my opinion. But it must have been bizarre for everybody else listening to it. Ray, you heard this, but just to refresh our memory, when he was asked, what about Syria? What did you talk about? Did you come up with anything? This was Trump's answer. Have a listen.
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part of the question. We've worked with Israel long and hard for many years, many decades. I think we've never has anyone, any country been closer than we are. President Putin also is helping Israel, and we both spoke with Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us, so both countries would work jointly. And I think that when you look at all of the progress that's been made in certain sections with the eradication of ISIS, we're about 98%, 99% there, and other things that have taken place that we've done, and that, frankly, Russia has helped us with in certain respects. But I think that working with Israel is a great thing, and creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much.
Ray, well, what do you say to that? To me, correct me if I'm wrong, you're vastly more experienced than I am. I'm not patronising it. You are. You've been around longer. You know how these things work. I don't. He's just said there that we'll do whatever Israel tells us to do. Right?
Yeah, you know, I'm Irish and I tend to exaggerate. I said that he said Israel 4 times, but he really said Israel nine times.
Israel.
In that 1-minute clip. So, you know, if there were any lingering doubt as to who is running U.S. foreign policy towards Syria, towards Iran, toward any part of that area, I mean, just listen to that one clip. It's Israel. And we have the New York Times in one uncensored report in 2013 saying that when the Israeli policymakers were asked what their preferred option in Syria was, they said, we like to have no outcome there, because as long as there's chaos in Syria, Israel has nothing to fear from Syria. Now, the Golan Heights, I've been up there. They command the whole area. Who owns the Golan Heights? They're part of Syria. Who occupies them? The Israelis. And so we're bending over backwards to implement a buffer zone so that the territory occupied by Israel will not get anywhere near the terrorists such as they are left in that part of Syria. You know, there's one other thing. Since some of your people are British subjects, you should know that when George W. Bush was planning the attack on Iraq, and this goes back to April of 2002, he had a fellow named Tony Blair.
Yeah, you were right the first time.
Yeah, okay. Now, what did Blair testify to that Chilcot committee? He said, you know, what I remember about talking about, we're hot and heavy about Iraq, but, you know, Israel was the main factor there. We were on the phone with Israel several times during those conversations. Nobody did Chilcot. Did they ever ask Tony Blair, well, why were you in touch with Israel and you're planning to invade Iraq? So, you know, that's the, God, it's just so disturbing because it's not really, really hard to understand, but you won't find it. You won't find it in the major media, either in our country or in Great Britain.
Ray, here's a wacky conspiracy theory. I'm mindful of the fact that I'm sure you've got another 10 calls like this coming your way today, so I won't keep you too much longer. The wacky conspiracy theory, which I don't believe is a conspiracy theory, here's my 2 cents worth. It's all a charade. It's all theatre. How could the deep state be trying to, you know, unseat Trump or get rid of him when Trump is as much a puppet as his predecessors were before him? I can only conclude that there is an agenda to make us all even more engaged than we were. Maybe Joe and Josephine Public were disengaging from politics because they began to see through it because of the work of the independent media. Men and women like yourself and others giving airing to these types of things, Maybe they wanted to re-engage people with the whole process, get people mired in identity politics, and it's all just one big charade, Ray. I can only conclude that. I know it's going to sound preposterous to some people, but, you know, I don't believe there's any genuine desire to get Trump out of his seat there in the Oval Office, because he's as good or as bad as any of the rest of them, and the financial elites and the military-industrial complex, they don't care who's sitting in the high seat, you know, so long as they're playing by the rules of their game. Over to you.
Well, Richie, I have to tell you that there is a difference in kind here, not just degree. Trump is by far, in my view, the worst president the United States ever had. The difference between rich and poor, which is my major rule of thumb, is just zooming the gap there. He's doing all manner of things with respect to the environment. The list of outrageous things that he has done and the people he's hired to do them goes on forever. Now, what about this charade? We say charade here. I remember John Pilger asking me about a charade. Oh, you mean charade?
Very posh, yeah.
Well, the charade really is the military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media complex. Trump is no match for that. Eisenhower was right. Eisenhower wanted to say military, industrial, congressional complex. They didn't let him say congressional, but Congress is in there up to the hilt. Media, that's the new element here. I have never seen the media so bad as they are now, and I've been in Washington for 55 years. The biggest change that I've observed is that we no longer have, in any real sense, a free media in the newspapers and on TV. Thank God there are people like you and other people that have me on, that some people can at least hear what I think about things or what my colleagues do. So what we're up against is a very, very lucrative arms control business. I'm sorry, not arms control, arms sales business. We saw it in Trump saying, let's do 2% at NATO. No, 4%. And look, Lockheed and Raytheon, Grumman, they're great. You ought to buy. It's just so transparent. So he's a creature of these guys. And as long as they let him do his thing, as long as they let him conclude inordinately lucrative deals with Saudi Arabia, you know, people talked about repression in Russia. Repression. Oh, my God. Yeah, there's repression in Russia, but it doesn't hold a candle to what's going on in Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates, who fund all these think tanks we have here in Washington. In any case, it's all about the money. And as long as Trump keeps stoking up more business for the money people, and as long, I have to add this, Richie, as long as there's no moral voice speaking out against this. Now, this is very brief, but when Pope Francis came to speak to Congress, it's almost 3 years ago now, he stood up and he said, you know, the main problem is the blood-drenched arms trade. Whoa! I looked at that, I said, my God! And then all the congressmen get up and they're clapping and they're clapping, and then they're looking in their vest pockets to make sure the latest envelope from Lockheed and Raytheon is still there. You know, it was giving hypocrisy a bad name. But what happens several months later? Trump is going to visit the Vatican, and McGovern. You know, I don't agree with the Pope on everything. Lots of things I don't, but you know, I really thought he was on target with the blood-drenched arms trade. I said, "Oh my God, this is great! The Pope will have a chance to tell Trump what's up." Now, Trump goes to the Vatican the day after he has concluded the most exorbitant arms trade agreement, arms sales agreement with Saudi Arabia, and I'm saying, "Oh, this is even better." The Trump Pope is going to confront him. What does he do? Well, my progressive friends were very proud. They said, "Oh, Ray, look, you see what that Francis did?" I said, "What we do?" He didn't smile for the first 3 photo ops. How about that, Ray? And I'm saying, "Oh my God, yeah." Then he started smiling. Then he glad-handed this guy. And then what did he do? He gave him an encyclical. Now, most of people don't know what an encyclical is. The highest pronouncement issued by the Vatican. It's usually pretty good these days. Okay, what was this about? This was about the environment. Was that a good thing? It's a great thing to give Trump the encyclical on the environment. But you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Albert Camus after World War II. A bunch of Dominicans asked him to their monastery. They said, Albert, what did you think of the church's role in World War II? And he said, well, you will be surprised to hear this from an unbeliever, but I kept waiting for a voice from Rome. No voice came from Rome. My friends and I were just extremely agitated that no one spoke from a moral point of view. And then after the war, I was told, oh no, Albert, you are wrong. You are wrong. There was a statement from Rome. And they said it came in the form of an encyclical. And so I, Albert, said, qu'est-ce que c'est? What is an encyclical? And then they told me what an encyclical is. Then I said to myself, if no one knows, if not even Albert Camus knows about the encyclical, whose fault is that? So this was sort of a flashback to Camus saying this about an encyclical. They give this, Francis gives this encyclical, a good one, by the way. It's great on the environment to Trump, but he doesn't say diddly about the thing that he said was the main problem before Congress when he said, it's the blood-drenched arms trade. There it is in a nutshell. Even Francis flunks the test, in my view.
Yeah, and this is why I'll always argue the charade scenario, because while we jump all over one another, you have the Antifa, the anti-fascists, you have the alt-right killing one another and screaming at one another over these personalities like Trump and others. The military-industrial complex, or as PCR calls it, the military security complex. I'm not going to try and repeat what you said with those extra nouns I think you used to describe it, but it just goes about its business while we're distracted by it. That's how I see it. And you know, I wonder, and we are, I have kept you far longer than I agreed to, which is unfair. But, you know, I'd like to think that in an ideal, in a fair world, in a proper world, in a real world where people were real and genuine, Trump would have went in there today and Putin would have said to him, listen, you know why we annexed Crimea, you know what's really gone in Ukraine, you know who Victoria Nuland is and what happened in that country, and this can't go on any longer. And between me and you, pal, you know, we can change all this nonsense and we can out these neocon Zionists for who they are. But of course it doesn't happen, because I ultimately believe Trump and Putin are slaves to the same master. I'm going to give you the final word, Ray, and a sincere thanks again for coming on today when your time is in demand. Final word to you, my friend.
You're most welcome, Richie, anytime. Now, I would just tie this back to what we were talking about with respect to the summit today, okay? Where is the resistance coming from? Why is it that long after they have to concede that they lost the election because they had a really lousy candidate that nobody trusted? I mean, that Hillary Clinton, that's why they lost. Why is it that they keep hammering on, no, Russia sabotage. Russia is responsible for having Donald Trump win the election. Why is it? Because they don't want any relaxation of tensions with Russia. What would happen if peace broke out? My God, what would happen to the common European battle tank? Yeah. What would happen to increasing to 4% of NATO? Oh, so, you know, if you tie it all back, it's a pretty corrupt situation. My hope is that there are enough of us now aware of it and enough guts like Sam Husseini had today to say, look, we're right on the brink of a real catastrophe unless we talk about real things like nuclear disarmament.
Thanks for bringing up Sam Husseini at the beginning of our chat, and shame on me for not mentioning it. That is jaded, that. It's so jaded. Not what happened to Sam, but guys like me not talking about that because it's become so normal. And of course, if you don't talk about it, it just goes on. So it's right and proper that you brought it up. Folks, you know where to read Ray. I've tweeted out links to his articles. Go to raymcgovern.com. Legendary, distinguished servant to his country for decades, Ray McGovern, peace activist and great writer these days. I'm sure the phone is off the hook there, Ray, so thanks for coming on today, and I hope we'll be able to catch up again in the autumn. Thanks for your time.
You're most welcome, Richie.
Cheers, Ray. Thanks for that. Terrific guy, Ray McGovern there, live on the line from his home on a particularly busy day for him today. A lot of tweets came in on that. I will get to some of them in a minute. It's nearly 8 minutes past the hour, well, 7.5 minutes past the hour. For Monday's programme, we've not had any music because it's been that busy. This is John Farnham. I heard this on the radio the other day. I don't know what I had on, BBC Radio 2 maybe, in the car. A bit of Ken Bruce. I like a bit of Ken Bruce, me. This is your Richie Allen Show, none like it. Europe's most listened to independent radio show on Fab Radio 2, TuneIn Radio, triggerwarning.tv and richieallen.co.uk.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Welcome back. Welcome back. It's 13 minutes past the hour, Monday, July 15th, 2018. I tell you what, it's almost wintry looking out the window of the studio there. Desperately needed sup of rain. We needed a drop of rain. And we got it today. No harm in it at all. Still very humid, very muggy. But you know, it's easier to be in the studio now than it was a couple of weeks ago when it was unbearable. If it stayed like this now, it'd be grand, I tell you, till the end of the summer. Well, just a little bit of Brexit news. Just a little bit. I've been good now. I've been good. I've been smart, I think. I know it's driving you mad. I know there are people listening to this programme outside of the UK, and I know it's a turn-off. I know. But it's important, right? So there is a little bit of news. We're going to skip through it very quickly. And then I've got one or two stories that are non-Brexit related, non-political, non-politics related. Okay? So a little bit of Brexit. Let me scroll down there now. Brexit, yeah. The Prime Minister, Theresa May. It was a mad day, really, for her, I would guess, and for everybody around Westminster. The BBC reports this evening that she has been accused of caving in to conservative Brexiteers. Now, those would be members of Parliament, Conservatives, who are for a hard, a total Brexit. That which we voted for, a complete leaving of the European Union. So she's being accused of caving in because she agreed to 4 demands, 4 amendments that they wanted, or they want her to make to her customs bill, which was part of her white paper. Right? Critics said, they always say critics, but they don't name them, accepting the amendments to the customs bill meant that Theresa May's recently announced trade proposals were effectively dead in the water. Now, if you've not been following this, I always try and give you the Cliff Note version of it. What happened was, when May put forward this white paper, this Brexit white paper, the hardline Brexiteers on the backbenches of the Conservative Party were absolutely aghast and said that her proposals amounted to pretty much basically the UK staying in the European Union via the back door. Many of them said that her proposals would end up with the UK in a situation that was worse than actually being in the European Union. So when she put this paper out, David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, resigned, fell on his sword. Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, resigned, and a handful of ministers resigned. And there was more ministers resigned today. So it's chaos, really. Which I've got to brag about getting things right, because I don't get very much right. Let's be honest about it. Most of my predictions, they're far from Nostradamus-esque. But this was fairly predictable, at least for me anyway, on June 24th, 2016. May is adamant that the changes that she is making to appease the Brexiteers are consistent with her plan. Right. So what are these changes? Well, one of them will stop the UK from collecting tariffs for the EU. Now, that was in her plan. She suggested that the UK collects tariffs for the EU. This is as part of this Northern Ireland backstop situation to avoid a hard border with the Republic of Ireland, right? Right. And the other amendments would ensure that the UK was out of the European Union's VAT regime and require new legislation if the government ever wanted to have a customs union with the European Union. So it's absolute lunacy at the heart of government over Brexit. It was always going to be like this. Scott Mann is the latest Tory MP to stand down over the Prime Minister's plans. It's mad. It's a madhouse. Deliberately, by design. For the people caught up on it, it probably feels fairly real. But this is by design, because Brexit can never happen. Now, the former Education Secretary, Justine Greening, became the first Conservative Member of Parliament to do what? To do what? Well, to call for another referendum, as she did today. Do you want to hear her? This is Justine Greening, former Education Secretary, first Tory to break ranks and say, yes, it's time for a second referendum.
I think they need to choose between, in practice, the three alternative routes we have. One is a soft Brexit, that's the Prime Minister's deal. One is a proper clean break, which is a hard Brexit, and I think listening to the Leave voters in my own community, that's what they want. They wanted a clean break from the European Union. Or, of course, the third route is that we could stay in the European Union. I'm saying those are the three paths forward for our country in practice. People should be allowed to choose between them, and the way they should do that is to have two votes. They can vote for their first choice, and then they can vote for the option going forward that if they don't get the first choice is the next best one for them.
Yeah, kind of like proportional representation. You have three choices, right? And you number them on the ballot paper, 1, 2 and 3. This is what I want to happen, number 1. But if I don't get that, this is number 2. This is a load of monumental bollocks, isn't it? Eh? I mean, you know.
What kind of fuckery is this?
Why not put 20 choices on the ballot paper? Why not have 20 as opposed to 3, you know? So Hilary Benn then, Labour Party stalwart. You'd never know that Hilary Benn was Tony Benn's son, by the way. Couldn't be further. The apple couldn't have fallen further from the tree. Hilary Benn is the chair of the Brexit Select Committee. He's a disgusting Remainer, is Hilary Benn. And this was put to him today, this idea that you'd have another referendum with multiple choices. This was his response.
I don't think so. Because first of all, I don't think you can reduce this to a multiple choice questionnaire referendum. And secondly, Parliament hasn't yet had the chance to vote on a deal because we don't have a deal. All that happened in Chequers the Friday before last is the Prime Minister patched something together to try and bring her warring cabinet together. But as we've just been seeing, with David Davis being interviewed walking along the road, that fell apart and there doesn't seem to be a majority in the House of Commons for it. But secondly, and absolutely crucially, we don't have an agreement with the European Union. We haven't even heard from the European Union what they think of the proposals that the Prime Minister has put forward. Now, the crucial vote, the really important moment, will be in the autumn at some point, if a deal comes back, where Parliament will have to decide.
Do you think you are going to get a deal, though? Because, I mean, what's remarkable about the Chequers agreement is that, yes, it's been attacked by the William Rees-Moggs and Boris Johnsons of this world.
Who the hell is William Rees-Mogg?
Well, also been attacked by the Justin Greenings and...
Who's Justin Greening? I think Bunter is fucked. It's time to put him out to pasture. Adam Bolton, it's over.
And some of the most ardent pro-Europeans.
Well, I think that just reveals the complexity of the politics surrounding Brexit. But look, in our most recent Select Committee report, we said it was important when we get to that moment, the government will put forward a motion, assuming there is an agreement reached with the EU that will say that this House approves the withdrawal agreement. And we said it's important that a number of amendments can be considered by the Speaker and then put to the House, because it's about trying to find a consensus in Parliament.
A consensus in Parliament, says Hilary Benn. No, pal. 52% of the people of this country voted to leave. There's no need for any consensus in Parliament. You just leave. You walk out. You know, even Remainers today, some Remainers, even conceded that they're beginning to find the conduct of the European Union ugly and reproachable, to say the least. This is the arrogant, smirking, smug conduct of Jean-Claude Ever the Drunker. who'd get pissed on a barman's fart, and all the rest of them laughing at the UK government, saying, we're not going to agree to anything. We're going to let the clock run down. We're going to let Parliament take over. We're going to see the government collapse, and we're going to see a Labour Lib Dem coalition come in. It's dreadful. How dare Hilary Benn say Parliament has to reach a consensus? No, it doesn't. People spoke. They said, we want out, we want out, we want out now. But it ain't going to happen, is it?
As to what is sensible. That multiple choice question in Parliament, effectively.
Well, what Parliament might either say, yep, that's fine, off you go, or Parliament could say, we decline to give approval to the withdrawal agreement, but for different reasons. And so from my point of view, if it doesn't include provision for the UK to remain in a customs union, which would be a much simpler and easier way.
Customs union, says Hilary Benn, the pathological lawyer. His father must be turning in his grave. Great man that Tony Benn was. 'Twas made abundantly clear by Remainers and Brexiteers during the run-up to the referendum that leaving the European Union would mean leaving the customs union and a single market. And I'm sorry to say, I am going to play this 30-second bit of audio again for the 500th time since June of 2016.
The British public would be voting if we leave, would be to leave the EU and leave the single market.
Should we come out the single market?
I think that is almost certainly would be the case, yes.
Do you want us to stay inside the single market, yes or no? No, we should be outside the single market. I had Michael Gove in that chair, and I said, after Brexit, will we be in the European single market, yes or no? And he said, no.
And he was right.
So we won't be in the European single
Michael,
market.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd be out of the single market. That's the reality. Britain would be quitting the single market.
So there we have it. George Osborne, David Cameron, Andrea Leibson, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove on both sides of the argument. If you vote to leave, you vote to leave the single market. What bit don't you understand about that?
Yeah, what bit don't you understand? And the customs union, of course. The customs union was mentioned all the time as well. Leaving means leaving. There's no going back. The Remainers held this over those of us who wanted to leave like a kind of a sword of Damocles. You know, if you leave, you're out of this and you're out of that and then you're screwed. Now they want to say people didn't understand what they were voting for. But they're liars. People knew damn well what they're voting for. But they ain't going to get it. And again, a number of people today from all sides of the argument said that they were almost resigned to happening here what happened in Ireland, in Denmark and in France, that the European Union won't accept any country leaving. They'll screw it up and they'll ask that country, or they will force the government of that country to ask the question again until they get the answer they want. Tyranny is what it is. 26 minutes past the hour. More music, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of interesting and comical stories from the press today. Some interesting stuff. We're going to get away from Brexit and away from politics more or less for a few minutes. Music from the Blue Oyster Cult on the Richie Allen Show. This is Don't Fear the Reaper. Right, that was Don't Fear the Reaper. I want to interrupt that because there's a few things I want to get through before we finish at the top of the hour. You know, I was reading today, this is a bizarre story, Elon Musk, the SpaceX guy, the billionaire, the entrepreneur, he must have more money than sense, this guy. He's called one of the divers, one of the British divers who assisted in the rescue of the Thai boys, not Thai, Thai boys, the Thai children. Yes, the 12 lads and their coach who got stuck in the cave. Well, one of the divers criticised a publicity stunt by Elon Musk. Musk said he was sending a submarine of sorts to help out this rescue and to assist in the rescue. And one of the divers, a British guy, basically scoffed at this mini submarine idea and said it was not practical and it was basically ridiculous. He couldn't have been more strong in his condemnation of the submarine. The diver's a guy called Vern Unsworth. What did Musk do? He called him a paedophile on Twitter. You couldn't make it up. He called him, let me just scroll down and see what he called him. He called him a pedo guy. Billionaire Musk referred to the British caver as pedo guy. Slang for paedophile, says Sky News, in a series of now deleted tweets. Well, dear listener, there's very little that I could claim to be an expert in, but libel is one of them. That's a stonewall case of libel right there. It doesn't matter that he deleted the tweets. He's called him a paedophile. He's going to have to hand over a fairly large check to the diver. I would say 6 figures, high end, or even 7 figures. Marvellous. I wish Elon Musk would call me a paedophile, or somebody with loads of money. Somebody with lots of money would call me a paedophile. Happy days. Straight to the solicitor. Please instruct a barrister. Bizarre story, that. More money than sense, I suppose. But then again, I suppose if you've got the sort of money that Elon Musk has, you can call anybody anything you want. It's probably pocket change what he will eventually pay him. Have a listen to this. This made me laugh today, but also made me a bit mad. Here's the headline in the Daily Mail. Are you listening? Here's the headline. Radox comes under fire for labelling its men's shower gels heroic and powerful, while labelling its women's products glam and fabulous. So Radox is under fire. You can't call your men's shower gels heroic and powerful and call the women's shower gels glam and fabulous. You can't, says who? Philip Green. Not him. Not the BHS guy. Just some guy called Philip Green, who must be an angry man. He must be a font of simmering rage, dear listener. Because he was in Sainsbury's in London, and as he was going around with his trolley or his basket on his arm, obviously pissed off that he's there, because no bloke should have to do the shopping. You and I know this. What bloke should have to do that? Go in there and shop. There's no place worse in the world for a man to be than the aisles of a supermarket. But anyway, I digress. So he's in there, and he's a font of simmering rage. And he said he was appalled when he came to the health and beauty products and sanitary products aisle. He said that the men's range is labelled by the term strong, while the women's are labelled as exotic. And he went into absolute meltdown. Meltdown. He has 2 daughters, and he said he was outraged after he spotted the example of everyday sexism while shopping on July 7th. It gets worse. This guy is a priest. He's a priest. He's a proddy. He's a proddy. Only proddy priests have children. It's disgraceful. It's not proper religious. That's ungodly. He's a priest and he's a teacher from Potter's Bar, and he went into meltdown when he saw the labels on the Radox products. Holy shit. Sporty, heroic and strong for the men. Glam, fabulous, sensational and exotic for the women. Meltdown. Radox said, well, the products can be used by both men and women and meet a variety of different needs. But Mr. Green says, I don't want my wife Helen and my daughters Emily and Abby becoming used to seeing these sorts of messages. Heaven forbid. My wife and daughters are undoubtedly sporty, heroic, powerful and strong, so I was quite upset when I saw the packaging. And I'll never again buy Radox products until men is removed from the labels, said Philip. Outrage, absolute outrage by Philip Green there.
What kind of fuckery are you?
Yeah. Fathers of teenage girls getting outraged about the labelling of sanitary products. Ah, Philip, if you only knew. Your government wants your girls to get the HPV vaccine that could destroy their immune system and render them in wheelchairs. But Radox is talking about heroic men. They're getting sprayed, your daughters, like the rest of us, with heavy metals, dropping from the ionosphere, breaching the blood-brain barrier, affecting every facet of our lives. But you're pissed off with Radox. Your daughters are being targeted by Facebook, Google, DARPA, the Pentagon, DARPA, look it up, addicting them to technology, brainwashing them, and altering their brains physically, proven by serious academics. But you're getting outraged in aisle 7 in Sainsbury's. Your children, your daughters are being taught that they can assume one of 75 genders. Yeah, they are. One of 75 genders, if they feel like it. One of 75. And they're getting lessons on relationships from people who have no business going near a child. And you want to talk about radar. I don't know why the Mail publishes this stuff, but I'm glad they do. And on the education, children as young as 4 will get consent lessons to counter soaring number of sex assault cases, online porn, and sexting even in schools. Primary schools, we've talked about this at great length. Primary schools rolling out consent lessons for 4-year-olds. Yeah. They will be taught, children as young as 4, how to deal with online and real-life peer pressure. Consent classes, allegedly to counter soaring sexual assault cases in schools and the exposure of children to online pornography and sexting. Boys and girls in primary schools will be taught about respecting and enforcing boundaries. When they get a bit older, they'll study consent and the laws on sexual abuse, grooming, domestic violence and harassment. This was in yesterday's Sunday Times, but I missed it. They will learn the building blocks and concepts of consent in an age-appropriate way, according to the Department for Education. Have parents been consulted on this? No, not at all. Because your children are not your children. They are their children, and they'll do whatever they want. And they will say to your child whatever they want to say. There's nothing you can do about it, unless you homeschool. They're claiming that there were 30,000 cases of children sexually assaulting other children in the last 4 years. I'd love to have access to the data and to the reports to see exactly what constituted a sexual assault. Because when I was in primary school, we used to play things like kiss chase. Kiss and chase, we used to call it. I never got chased. And you would chase the girl of your dreams, and if you caught her, you'd give her a peck on the cheek, and then you'd run away. Presumably that's an assault now. I don't know. Great, isn't it? The classes form part of a sex and relationship guidance update. The first one of its kind since 2000. The consultation is all ready to go, and it's going to be launched this week. And as I said to you there a second ago, parents will have absolutely no say on this whatsoever. 21 minutes to the top of the hour. Final quick break, back in a minute with more. And I'm going to talk a little bit more briefly about Ofcom and the regulation of the independent media. There's been a little bit of news since I spoke to you about this last week. It's news, sadly, that confirms that which I told you last week, which is that the days of independent media, broadcasting what you like, when you like, are coming to an end real soon. Back after these.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place High in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Now, I told you about 2 years ago, and at the time, I suppose the program was nearly 2 years old, I suppose, or just over 2 years old. And I said that people known to me who've worked in television and radio for years had been warning me that in the very near future, the government here was going to try and regulate independent content creators. How did it work before? I did a video on this last week. I'll try not to repeat what I said in the video, even though I'm mindful of the fact that maybe a lot of you didn't see that video, but I'll try to freshen it up just a little bit. How does it work until now? Well, this is how it works. Ofcom, which stands for the Official Communications Act, is the regulatory body for radio, television, communications in this country, broadcast media, right? It does have domain over the internet as well. And it has had domain over online television and online radio stations. What constitutes an online television or an online radio station? That's a good question. The answer is very easy. Ofcom has defined online TV, online radio before as a company, or not necessarily a company, but an entity, an organisation broadcasting online through a linear schedule. So if you broadcast online and you have a schedule of programming from day to day that is linear, Jean-Ann Crowley, 8 o'clock in the morning till 10, Base Ninja, 10 to midday, Himanshi, midday to 4, and then Richie Allen or whatever the hell. That's a linear schedule. That has been part of Ofcom's remit. Ofcom regulates that. If you were on your own, like myself, and you were broadcasting yourself, you were exempt, effectively, and you have been exempt. You weren't exempt from the legal implications of doing silly things on air, but you were exempt from your content being regulated by the official regulatory body. But that being said, like I said, if I'd gone on the air and said something about somebody, I could be sued for libel. Ofcom has got nothing to do with that, libel, none of that. Their remit is to regulate what is broadcast and to ensure that that content is not harmful. It's not inciting in any way, hatred or violence or anything like that. That's basically its remit, okay? The legality is a different thing entirely. However, I was told a couple of years ago, Richie, it's all going to change. Because a guy like you accepts advertising from advertisers, and because you accept financial assistance from your listeners, even though you don't demand it, which I don't, I don't put the program behind a paywall. It'll always be free, whether we have listeners' donations or not. It'll always be free. But because you do that, I was told, because you broadcast on a daily basis, you have your website, you're a journalist, you're putting your show out there, you will be regulated. And very early last week, my contact, who has been 4 decades working at the BBC and is about to retire, and who's happy to talk about this on the record after he retires. He's an honourable man, he could do it now, But he's always agreed, contractually he's agreed forever not to speak to other radio stations or programmes about what goes on at the BBC or elsewhere. But when he retires, he'll come on the programme. And he said to me, it's game over. In 2019, Richie, they're going to look at the independent, I said, what did I say last week? Sole traders. And they're going to say, you got to come and be licensed by us. Now, I was sent an email over the weekend, and one of my listeners tweeted this today. I hadn't seen this. But the chief executive of Ofcom is a woman called Sharon White. And she's been writing in the Times. Must have been in the Culture magazine. I didn't see it. And Ofcom's website has also carried this article by her. And in the article she's written, which was published about 4 days ago, she basically says, more or less in a nutshell, what my contact at the BBC, my deep throat, don't you know, has been saying, and what I've suspected. You know, going back to the days of TPV television. And I'm going to read you a little bit of what she wrote. She wrote, for decades, habit and routine have helped to define our relationship with the news. In the past, people consumed news at set times of day, but heard little in between. But for many people, those habits and the news landscape that shapes them have now changed fundamentally. Vast numbers of news stories are now available 24/7 through a wide range of online platforms and devices, with social media now the most popular way of accessing news on the internet. Today's readers and viewers face the challenge to keep up. So too, importantly, does regulation. The fluid you heard that, right? So too, importantly, does regulation. The fluid environment of social media certainly brings benefits to news, offering more choice, real-time updates, and a platform for different voices and perspectives. Yeah, right. But it also presents new challenges for readers and regulators alike, something that we, as a regulator of editorial standards in TV and radio, are now giving thought for the online world. New challenges for new challenges for regulators and readers, new challenges for readers and regulators alike, something that we, as a regulator of editorial standards in television and radio, are now giving thought for the online world. It's coming down the line very soon. She goes on to talk about fake news and clickbait. Fake news. Fake news. When licensed by Ofcom, because I wouldn't have any choice. Ofcom can take a complaint from somebody who said the Richie Allen Show broadcast fake news. According to who? And then you get a strike against you and you're in breach of your licence, and then you're fined, or maybe not fined, you're warned, then maybe you're fined, and eventually you are delicensed. Your licence is taken away from you. Online companies, she writes, the chief executive of Ofcom, need to be much more accountable when it comes to curating and policing the content on their platforms where this risks harm to the public. Where it risks harm to the public. We say that your monologue, Mr. Allen, you made some claims about somebody or about some organisation, or you gave opinions on something. That is fake news. That is harmful to the public because it's confusing, it's misleading the public. You are in breach of the guidelines. Therefore, you must be censured, censored, warned, given a written warning originally, then later fined, and then eventually kicked off. They have the power to confiscate the equipment from any entity, any content creator that they deem unworthy of a license, or that they have confiscated the license from. We've taken your license away, you keep broadcasting, no problem. We'll take your equipment away. That's what's happening. And they're saying that they're going to outline their thoughts on regulating independent media in the autumn. Now, I had this because in my contacts, not me, you know, I'm not the genius researcher, but I had the contacts, as any half-decent journalist would. I was told this over 2 years ago. I was warned. And last week, my friend warned me, before this article was published, he said it's coming in 2019. And he said, now don't get your knickers in a twist here and accuse me of big-headedness or arrogance or ego. I have none. I have a bit of arrogance sometimes, maybe. Every one of us does, but I have no ego and I have no sense of self-importance. I ain't important. He said to me, because you are clearly reaching bigger numbers of people than any other independent content creator in the UK, because you take advertising on, because you're a limited company, they're going to come for you. Of course, they'll come for others, but I'm just saying, very early doors, speaking a bit of Wronglish, they're going to come to us and they're going to say, you have to have a license. I won't be hanging around because I know that within a few months of getting the license, I would eventually be told that my license has been withdrawn and I no longer have any right to broadcast my live radio program every day. And that's what it is. That's what they're doing. And I'm going to tell you this and you're not going to like it. There's nothing anybody can do about that here. Nothing. Nothing. There is nothing you can do about it. There isn't a broadsheet journalist. I was speaking to Gilad Atzmon today. Gilad was due on tonight. He's going to be on with me next Monday. Love Gilad and everything he stands for. He'll be on with me next Monday. We had a chat this morning and there was one or two things going on that we decided we'd leave it for a week before he comes on. I'll tell you more about it next week on the programme. But anyway, Gilad and I were talking about this and he's as unsurprised as I am that this is coming. But he's as convinced as I am that there is nothing we can do about it. What can you do about it? Who's going to stand up? One of the things Gilad said to me today was, he said, and you know, not a single broadsheet journalist will write about this. Will write about how disgustingly tyrannical this is. You have a computer. You pay for a stream. And we're telling you that you cannot stream for free. We're telling you that you cannot stream and invite interested parties to listen in. Parties that are not forced to listen. Intellectual people like your good self. You make a choice consciously. I listen to Richie Allen because I think it's interesting, or I don't listen to him because I think he's a fucking idiot. That's the way it goes. Happy days. Plenty of people don't listen to me because they think I'm an idiot. That's absolutely fine. You make that choice. Ofcom is now saying no more. Editorial standards. You must sign up to a set of editorial standards and accept our domain over you. When you are complained for being in breach of those regulations, blah, 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 not to labour the point, we will deal with you accordingly through, as I said, warnings, fines, and eventually having your licence taken away, as happened to Russia Today in this country some years ago. Their licence to broadcast here was withdrawn. So that's where we are on that. It's no joke. Incredible timing that we spoke about this last week on my little silly amateur YouTube video from my man cave, because I'd heard from my mate only a couple of days later. This is published in the Times and it's published on Ofcom's website as well. This woman, the CEO of Ofcom, whose name is Sharon White. We're coming for independent content creators because we can't allow people like you interview people like Paul Craig Roberts, like Ray McGovern, like Sharon Gale, credible woman, who came out talking about forced adoption and what happened to her and her husband years ago. We can't have that. We can't have people hearing about this stuff. We can't have people hearing about what Rothschild Zionism is. We can't have it. So you're going to stop doing it. You're going to get a license, and when you have the license, you're either going to stop talking about that stuff and become mainstream light, like most of the independent media, mainstream light. We'll accept that. Or we'll take your license away. And you're gone. So when we get wind of that next year, I suppose I'll be faced with two choices. One choice, really. Leave the country to carry on with the programme, or give it up and take another job in the private sector, maybe not in the media, maybe doing something else. So it's got nothing to do with the support of the programme. It's got nothing to do with finances. You don't have to go rushing to making a donation. It's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with them saying it's game over now. In September this year, so a couple of months' time, we'll be 4 years old. I'm almost 100% certain that we won't see 5. Not in this country anyway, the way things are going. So there you go, a little bit of an update there. And yeah, remember years ago when regional radio stations in Ireland, like WLR, which I worked for a few years, when they started out, pirate radio, they used to move around with a transmitter. They used to broadcast from a van and move around to evade the authorities. We can't even do that now, you know, because obviously FM transmitters, no point in using those. You only reach a tiny audience anyway. So yeah, that's it. It's terrible, but I don't know what to do about it. But it was inevitable, you know, because while idiots like the clowns on the far right and the far left are being promoted through social media and Google/YouTube, guys like us and my guests giving a totally different look at reality and who's really in charge of what's going on, they're marginalising us. And I'll tell you why. Because the guests who come on this programme, many of them come very, very, very close to explaining what's really going on inside and outside the 5 sense reality. Not me. It's got fuck all to do with me. I'm just a conduit. No false modesty here. I've never been modest. I'm the conduit. It's the people coming on. It's the platform. We got to stop that. We can't have that. So they'll have to be regulated by us, or they will have to stop broadcasting. Here's some Twisted Sister. This might be an empty sentiment, but I'm going to leave you on this. By the way, if you have never donated to the programme and you do listen regularly, you can do, if you feel like it, only at richieallen.co.uk. But that story has got nothing to do with money. I'm going to leave you with this. Twisted Sister. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks to Ray McGovern. What a legend.